I'm back, and I have a I think I have an answer to a question you may not have asked yet, but if you haven't seen my last video on being present, you can actually go to the YouTube channel. I'll put a link to it in the description when I post this. But it's about being present, right? And the idea that a lot of our issues come down to the fact that we as individual human beings have not been present in our lives and allowed other things to occur that, when you look around, you go, what the heck is all of this? This doesn't make sense, right? And I really am, with the situation, with the way my life has gone, right? I've realized in my own life just how lack of present I was, and so then the question is, well, how do you do it, right? How do you sort of wake up, right? How do you become present? And the answer, I should say, here's what I did, at least as a starting point, because I remember about 5 years ago there was a certain political event that occurred that was very contentious on social media, and I don't care how you felt about it, the rhetoric on both sides, on all sides, was just insane. And in the lead up to this and everything, it realized that the people I was following on social media, the things I was seeing, was actually causing me anxiety, too much anxiety, and I had no control over it. And I realized that, and at some point, just, kind of as an instinct almost, I just said, okay, if this event actually happens, I'm going to remove myself from social media. Well, now, okay, I didn't actually remove myself from social media because like this YouTube account has been set up since like 2006. Same thing with my Twitter account, or X, or whatever the heck they call it now, all the different, I'm still on the social media platforms, but at that point I stopped giving it regular attention, right? And I'll tell you that, I took the apps off my phone and everything. And even to this day, the only social app I have on any of my phones is LinkedIn. And even then, like, I only use it, I only use it occasionally, right? Because every one of these, because every one of these social media platforms, there's this content that just stresses me out, right? And what I realized is part of why that is because, well, I used to follow everybody. I used to not have any discernment about who I followed, right? And so as a result, I get, and there's a certain amount of getting a mix of messages and understanding kind of what maybe what's going on out there. I'm not saying be completely ignorant, but at the same time, the more you engage with it, the more you give it your energy. And in fact, there's a quote from Morgan Freeman. He was asked on 60 Minutes one time about how do you stop racism, right? And he says, well, stop talking about it, right? Well, the more that you engage in these platforms on topics that you have no control over, and are just designed ultimately to create anxiety and spread anxiety and keep the anxiety going, the more unhappy you're going to be. And I realized this by removing myself, and I became a whole lot calmer because I wasn't getting that input all the time. And then I think back to when I was a kid, right? We didn't have access to, anything and everything all of the time, as John Valby says in his song "Welcome to the Internet," right? We have access to anything and everything. And that's good in a sense that it makes knowledge more available to more people. But at the same time, it allows information to spread that, I'm not getting into, whether, what information is true or not, right? I think anybody, can figure that out for themselves. Right. And I think that's, it's another thing, like, trust yourselves, folks. I don't care what other people say. You know what the right answer is, right? You just have to, take the time and listen to yourself and realize and understand, right? It's not what society thinks and anything like that. It's what you think, you as a person, right? It's not it's not what the collective, the collective will sort itself out, I think. But it starts with you and understanding what, that you matter, your opinion, your truth, right? Is important, but you have to also be respectful, right? And that's when you're trying to express that truth. And that's what I've always done, right? Is I've always held on to the truth, and I've always been wanting to find it. And like I said, you don't find it out there, you find it in here, folks. That's where I have found it for sure, right? But to be present, yeah, one of the ways you do that is to shut down the noise. And so being, it's not to say that you don't consume anything, right? It's not like I don't consume any social media. I mean, heck, I'm on YouTube now. So yeah, I kind of see some things on YouTube, but I also don't take it on, right? If it's not something that I, because I don't waste time on content that I don't agree with, right? I don't get, I'm not in it. I don't necessarily, I'm not to say that sometimes you might need to stand up to something, but you got to be realistic about what you can do about it. And the more you engage with something, the more you give it energy, whether you don't want it in the world or not. The more you engage with it, the more you give it energy. So, there's a lot of stuff out there in the world, whether it's social media, whether it's, I don't know, mainstream. We talk about television and the media and and all the sort of the traditional sort of forms of entertainment, right? That those all of it persists because you give it attention, right? Because you're engaging with it, whether you like it or not, right? That you're still putting energy toward it, right? So, stop engaging with the things that you don't want to engage with, right? For whatever reason, and engage with the things that bring you that bring you joy, that bring you laughter, that are loving, that are all the good things that humanity has, right? That we all have, health, happiness, love, and abundance at our beck and call, and we just have to, we just have to accept it. We just have to see it, right? We have to engage with it. And there's a lot of stuff out in the world that doesn't do that, right? And then the way that goes away is you stop giving it the attention. It's like in war games. They say, the computer says at the end, the only winning move is not to play. Well, that's how and even opting out, right? I mean, on certain things, right? Just because everybody else is doing something or watching the latest show or whatever doesn't mean you have to. If it doesn't feel right to you, don't do it, right? But be your own person, right? But again, you have to. One of the ways you be more present is and to find out who you are is to turn off the noise, right? And that means, spending some time by yourself for a few minutes, right? With not even with your tech, right? Just sitting alone in silence. And I know how uncomfortable that is at first, right? I tried to do that, a few years ago, right? I mean, when I had to, eliminate all the social media, and then later I took it a step further and stopped listening to podcasts too. It's like I kind of shut down and went, I need to, it's not to say that I didn't listen to anything, but I used to listen to 40 plus hours of podcast a week at 1.5 or 2x speed to maybe listening to, 2 or 3 podcasts maybe. And even now, no, let's put it this way. I produce more podcasts than I listen to. And in fact, if you're looking for an audio podcast, go check out The Lotus Effect. Saturday, and we do it live Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be doing that on YouTube too now. But anyway, this is, and there'll be, of course, there's a link on the profile page for The Lotus Effect show that I do with my partner. And this is it. We all need to be more present in our own lives, and part of that is, removing things from our lives that or maybe not giving so much attention to things in our lives that aren't serving us, that aren't helping us to be healthy, happy, full of love and abundance, right? You can't control the content that's out there, but you can make a choice about how you decide to actually address that, right? You can just say no. You can opt out. You don't have to do all of these things. And you know what? And I've been doing this all, like I said, I think I having like cable television with all the material coming in. I never really wanted that anyway. I mean, God, in the 90s, I was like, no, I really don't want television, except I like watching football. Well, okay, fine. But here's the but the reality is you get to choose what information you consume. You get to choose what food you consume too. That's a whole different topic. But again, you get to choose. But you have to be present, right? You have to make that conscious choice. You say, yeah, I want to do that, right? You want to be present. You actually can't just go along to be along. You actually have to see if it aligns with what you want to do, right? Just because everybody else is doing it doesn't, if you're not comfortable, don't do it, right? This is, be your own person. And I know for myself, I've been to my own person, and and at times it's led to some interesting situations in my life that I've learned a lot from. But but at the end of the day, I sleep well at night because I'm true to myself, right? And again, one of the ways I did that was ultimately turning down the noise, right? And even with the things that are in your life, right? For example, I've always, for a long time, right? I've worked from home for a long time, and I've had the corporate email up on a computer, and there's mail coming in all the time. A long time ago, I turned off all the notifications on that stuff because it just seemed like it was a waste of energy. And I've done that on my phones too. It's not to say that I don't have any notifications that come in, but I've tuned them quite a bit, right? I was present, and I said, no, I don't want this in my life. And because what happens with the average person? I don't know, there was an ad for a cruise line recently where the guy was getting all the notifications on his phone and then took a sledgehammer to it, right? Because he's so frustrated. Well, if he took the moment and actually tuned all that down, maybe he wouldn't be so frustrated. Maybe he'll be more free and everything. So yeah, disconnect, right? You don't have to know about anything and everything all of the time, right? We've come to a point where we're so stimulated. And, I don't remember being this stimulated at any point in my life because, yeah, all of the technology, all of the media, all of everything, right, is causing us to just we get so much of it that we numb out. Well, turn down the noise, right? And then you don't have to be numb anymore. You can actually feel. You can actually engage with the world. You can come out here and stand next to a rock and record a video if you want to, or do something or play music or do something that brings you joy, brings you happiness, right? That isn't hurting anybody else, and just do that, right? I mean, look, but it all starts with turning down the noise, right? And doing all of those things. So I don't know. That's my thought for today. And yeah, I actually did rename the channel also too. It's now officially Phoneboy Speaks Again. And yeah, I'll do the normal sort of social media things. Look, share this with if you think somebody else might benefit from this. Yeah, please. Do me a solid and share it with people, right? But you don't have to share it indiscriminately, but you can share it with somebody that's going to help. Because look, I don't, I want to. I've gone through hell, and the least I can do is show people how to get out the other side of it. And we've all gone through our own version of this, or going through our own version of this, right? Well, there's a way to get out of it. There's a way to get out of it. But it starts with you. As the Rush lyric says, my ship isn't coming and I just can't pretend, right? Well, yeah, I'm not pretending anymore, right? It's like, look, there's, you have to, you got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and be more present in your life. Take control of the things that you're consuming in your life, right? Whether it be information or food, right? And and again, do things that make you that bring you joy, that support your health, happiness, love, and abundance. I don't think I could say anything more. Well, yeah, I will on tomorrow and Saturday because I got a couple of podcasts that I got going on. But anyway, that's it for this video. We'll see you next time.